Hello, I'm Victoria, and this is the Victorious Wool podcast. I am sitting in a different house. It's September 6th. I think it's Labor Day. And I have just a few things to share. It's beautiful and sunny, as you can see. Sun coming in. It was a little cloudy this weekend, and a little humid, which we sometimes get here, but not a lot. And it was, I think, a little warm last night, which is fun to have nice weather in September and not be smoky. I know I talk about that a lot, but we think about it a lot around here. So I live on an island a little bit away from Seattle in the Pacific Northwest. And the last few years, we've gotten a lot of smoke from wildfires coming in from Northern California, Eastern Washington, Eastern Oregon, and from British Columbia above us. So this year we were lucky and only got a couple of days. So every day that we have warm, clear air weather is so nice. I wanted to share my prickly alico bag that I got, I think maybe a week and a half ago. Just forgot to share it on the last episode. Prickly alico is out of Florida. They come with these really cute tassels. It's got a little cabin and real flannel. It's really cute. I've been wanting one of these ones for a while. I think it's orange on the inside. It's a good size. This is not the biggest. I have one that's slightly bigger than this, but this is like perfect for socks or a hat or maybe a leg warmer or a mitten. Right now it has my external hard drive in it that I've been carrying around. But yeah, it smells really good. So if you get a chance to get one of these, you should get one. It's very autumnal, this color selection too. So it's making me happy right now. I pulled out of my stash of finished items a pair of my Kjerste Swanky socks. And I don't think on the podcast I've ever talked about this pattern before. This was my second or third pattern. I can't remember. Back in 2018, I went to the Rose City Yarn Crawl and met up with Kjerste from Wax and Wool, Kjerste Whaley, and she was just finishing the last few rows of like a toe on a pair of socks or something, and she handed them to me, like, oh, I just finished these. And they were such a nice gauge, and they were so springy, and I was like, oh, you should share this pattern with me, and I would love to get a really good sock pattern. And we ended up collaborating, and I ended up publishing it, and it was named after her, Kjerste Swanky Socks. She's designed a couple other patterns herself, but this was her first dip into that. She makes, obviously, wax and wool and soy candles out of Puyallup, Washington. This is Magpie Fibers Swanky Sock, which has a little bit of cashmere in it. It's an MCN, and this was, I think, the Stars and Stripes colorway, the gold and the gold, bronze, and silver, and then one of the grays. I can't remember what this is called because it's been a few years, but these are really nice fitting. You start at the top, you do a 1x1 rib. The toe is done Afterthought heel, which I do enjoy, and the foot and the toe are the usual. I think nowadays I'm knitting more heel flap and gusset socks. I haven't knit a pair of socks in quite a while, so I like to be able to switch it up and try new techniques. Afterthought is really fun because you get to like cut into your heel. I have done really great Afterthought heels, and I've also made mistakes. So I don't think I made mistakes until I'd already done this. I think I used like the wrong size needle when I made the Afterthought, so the heel was too small. What else have I done? I've just done weird things where like I've made it not work unintentionally. It just didn't work, and you do have then a hole in your yarn if you have to pull it out. But I think that's not ever been a problem because I think I just re-knit it with bigger needles, or I was knitting a shorty sock and I messed up the heel, and so then I just had less waist. Anyway, I like experimenting. I like trying new things, and if you haven't done an Afterthought heel before, they're really fun. I did do a tutorial. I think there's a tutorial on my YouTube channel of how to do it. I use both or three things. I knit my socks now with 9-inch circulars, and I think when I do Afterthought heels, I usually pick up the stitches with a long circular needle, and then I use DPNs to actually make it, because those just sort of work better for me, and I'd get less of a gap on the sides. But everybody's different, so you can only know until you experiment and figure that out. But this pattern is available on Ravelry, my Ravelry page, and at victoriaswool.com. It's called Kjerste Swanky Socks, which is I'll have to write it down as I say it, because I'm a kinesthetic speller. Kjerste. That's how you spell Kjerste. And then Swanky Socks. Yeah. I also pulled out of the finished archive in a plastic bag to keep the moths away. The big cabled all-over sweater that I made, I think this must have been 2016, so this is a really old one. It's long too. I made this when I was farming in Oregon. I spent a whole year as a farm apprentice, small vegetable farm, and I would knit. We didn't have wireless. We didn't have internet where we were living. We were living in a barn. It was really fun, and we only had internet in the tool shed, which was like a 2-minute walk from where we all slept. So we didn't like stream or watch TV. We read and listened to music, and I knit a lot. So we did like real things in our time off. And I started making this. I don't think I finished it while I was out there, but I finished it when I came back to Washington. This is the Rocky Coast Cardigan. I think that's the name by Anna Fettig. Let's see if I can put it on. Over my sweatshirt. It'll be toasty for just a bit. I did make the sleeves like extra long. I have like monkey arms. Something the pattern does not have, it doesn't have a shawl collar, and I kind of gave it one because it falls off my shoulders. So I gave the collar an extra bit. I don't wear it very much because it falls off my shoulders. It's just not a good fit for my shoulders. That's why I took out, originally I had just, I think, a regular collar that was this length, and it would just slide off. So I did short rows so that I could fold it over. And actually it either sits up by itself or I fold it over a little bit. And it stays up a little bit better. Obviously if I'm wearing something where it's gripping, like this would not fall off my shoulders because there's so much friction with the sweatshirt I'm wearing. As my sweatshirt's jammed in there, so it probably would be fine. There's just something about like keeping this area of my body warm when it's cold in the room and stuff that it doesn't quite do. And it doesn't close all the way. So maybe I would made a bigger size nowadays, but the sleeves are great. The cables are beautiful. It was a really easy pattern to knit. But it doesn't quite. The reason I wanted to talk about it today was because it doesn't quite hit all the boxes like the sweater I had last week. My very first sweater. I think this was number 3. No, this is number 4. So I haven't gone in sequence, but I wanted to talk about this one. I knit 3 pullovers, and then I knit this one. So I guess technically there are 4 sweaters that the first 4 that I knit, I don't wear, as I was talking about. You know, you have to practice, and you might have a lot of disappointments when you're knitting. So I have 4 sweaters that I don't wear. I do still own all of them, because they really only have meaning for me. It was a success in the fact that I adapted a pattern for the first time, I think, when I made the short rows and made the top of the collar like twice as thick as the front band. So yeah, that was really successful. Yeah, I've not made a cardigan like this since, because I'm concerned that that same kind of thing would happen, where it wouldn't stay on my shoulders. Maybe I wouldn't do a raglan, or I would check to see like how deep the front pieces are, that they actually are going to come together a little bit more, or I'd make a bigger size or something to make sure that that's the case. I did just knit Ginny by Andrea Mowry a few months ago, and that has a tie, and that has a short row fold over collar, and so maybe that one would slip off my shoulders a little bit, but it's tied. So I really like the look of open cardigans, but when they're less practical, I guess, so far, or I don't own enough of them to have made them a staple part of my wardrobe. I do think it would be nice to have like vests with an open cardigan, because then you are, still sweatered as much as you would be with a pullover, if not a little bit more for the parts that are doubled on your body. So that could work. I just haven't done that yet. But yeah, I made it extra long. I do think I want to make an all-over cable cardigan again. There's lots of Brooklyn tweed patterns that are really pretty. I have all-over cables. The only other thing I wanted to talk about, which I mentioned last time, was the process for designing something can be rocky. So a couple of weeks ago, I was working on a project that will be released next year, so I can't talk about it yet, but I'd been knitting it for a little while, and I realized sometimes this is part of the process where you go forward and you think you know what you're doing, or you think you figure things out, and you're going along, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this doesn't work. I had been writing down every single row, which I have done in the past, where you design something where every row is slightly different, and so you have to write every single row down, instead of doing a few rows written down, and then you write underneath that and you say repeat this so many times, so that you have less text. And I mentioned that, I think, on a couple of episodes ago. But it happened in this project, and I don't know why I didn't think of it before. Like, oh, this isn't going to work. This is going to be a lot of lines. Like, every section had like 22 rows in it, and there was going to be like 20 sections, and that's a lot of text. And I all of a sudden realized, wow, I really, really need to shorten these. I really need to condense these rows. And so I spent all day, like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., bent over at the desk, my desk, like struggling to figure out a way of making the two different charts I had like work together, and just to condense the rows. And I, in that, of course, realized that the piece that I had that was like this big totally had to be redone. Not that it would look all that different, but the rows wouldn't be, I would have had to change it. So, I just realized that I really couldn't continue going with what I had been doing, and had to pull out the whole piece. And I did finally, I think the next day, to get the pattern where I wanted it to be, and was able to write a whole section in one line, and the charts were great and everything. And so it was totally worth it, all that work. But when I was in the middle of it, it certainly felt like this is the worst thing. and lots of thoughts like, I'm going to have to quit. I can't figure this out. I'm going to have to tell the people I'm working with that I can't do it. Why didn't I realize this before? Like, that's all running through my head on repeat as I'm trying to figure out the math. And I hope that in the future when those things happen that I can be more aware of, like, this is part of the process and you're going to figure it out and it's okay. That this happen, I think it happens almost every single time I do a pattern. There's going to be like a freak out moment of like, oh, this isn't working, or I have to redo something. Maybe not as dramatic as that because it was a really long day. But yeah, the reason I wanted to tell that story is because I just listened to another creator talk about having a freak out at the beginning of a project, and that being part of their process. Like that the first big decision they make is usually causes an emotional breakdown. I was like, oh, I wonder if I do anything like that. That every time almost I'm having an experience that you could really call the creative process, because the creative process is like that you do the same thing every time. When people ask that, like, how do you design, or like, how do you write the pattern, or how do you figure out all these things? You have a process you go through every time, like a pathway that you've laid out for yourself. Maybe you've written it down, or like maybe you have a really good organizational system and you like just follow the process. And I don't really do that. I think looking back on it, I can see that project had this process, but it's not something I could really pay that much attention to while I'm doing it. So that was interesting for me to reflect on what that other maker had said and that experience I had a couple weeks ago. So if that ever happens to you, I always find looking behind the scenes and listening to other creative people talk about how they create stuff is really good, because it can get really isolating. You can feel like you're the only one that struggles to do creative stuff, and everyone else seems to have it figured out, and they're just publishing things, and it's not hard at all. Part of the work is that struggle and is figuring it out. I think there are probably a lot of people that don't have such a hard time, but they're definitely going to have moments where they figure it out. The hard time really comes from how much I rag on myself while I'm doing it, as opposed to just saying, oh, I need to fix this, and I'll work on it for a few hours, and then I need to go do something else. Instead, what I did was, I can't get up from this table until I fix this. And I did, but I think I really had this like sound solid fix the next day. But I got pretty far in the first 8 or 9 hours of figuring it out. But yeah, it'd be nice. I do know that if I have a creative problem, usually if I have to go do something else, my brain will keep working on it, and the solution will reveal itself while I'm in the middle of something else, like while I'm driving or in the shower. All of a sudden, the idea that the solution will come without me having to be totally zeroed in on it for a really long time, for the answer to come. It'll just come by itself. So getting up and doing something else is actually really helpful. Yeah, that's it. I hope that you had a really good Labor Day weekend. This is the second week of September. It's first full week of September, but the second week, really. And a lot of people have gone back to kids have gone back to school and everything. So, yeah, I hope that it's been enjoyable and the weather's nice where you are, and happy knitting.